Let's go ahead and talk now about campaign contributions. Jesse Unruh from the state of California, one of the most powerful men in California ever, said this: money is the mother's milk of politics. I don't believe that, especially now. And Beth Leach, academic, has written a book on lobbyists, in which she reports from her research only 1/3 of DC organizations make campaign contributions. 2/3 make no campaign contributions. No organization that I've ever worked for, and I've worked for some big organizations, big companies, never make campaign contributions on a regular basis. The influence of money is way overstated, and we'll talk about that. So money is the mother's milk of politics. That's old thinking, in my opinion. So during the campaign giving season, that's when lawmakers are looking for your support. And that's when they are going to listen to your facts. It's a chance to educate them about you, to tell them what your issue is. And sometimes, although you have to be very careful, it's a chance to get them to make a stand as their support. So you want to make the most of it. Does money buy votes? And you have the site for this in your materials. If it's a philosophical issue, I promise there's no amount of money you're going to give that's going to get them to change a vote. It ain't going to happen. How much are you going to have to pay them? How much are you going to have to pay someone very liberal to vote conservative? How many dollars do you have to give them? How many dollars do you have to give someone very conservative to vote very liberal? How many dollars? None. They're not going to do it. So these people say, oh, all you need to do is make a campaign contribution. No. The reason you make campaign contributions is to keep in office people you like. You're not going to change any of their views. You're not going to have a liberal suddenly become a conservative because you gave them a bunch of money. It's not going to happen. Will they take your money? Sure they will. Will they vote for you? No, they won't. So this whole idea of somehow you're buying something. People say to me, well, Robert, you get access. I go, you get access? How much is access worth? Let me ask you, you're talking to that lawmaker. That lawmaker has no idea what you're talking about. Why does the lawmaker give you access because you make a campaign contribution? Because he's got to give you something in exchange for your money. Yes, ma'am.
When do they know that you've made a campaign contribution? You make it on the website. How soon does the lawmaker know? Can you speak to that?
That would be almost instant. And then it has to be reported to the Secretary of State on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. Yeah, it's almost instant. And so you make these campaign contributions, you get access. So what good is access? First of all, they're not going to change their votes for you. Secondly, do you think they have the time to even understand what you're talking about? You want to talk to me about funding medical schools? What do I know about that? And so the idea of access is way overstated as well. So this staffer in D.C. says this: there's a dirty secret in Washington that neither Congress nor the special interest community want out. Campaign contributions really don't influence legislative outcomes all that much. The reality is that a campaign contributor will likely get access to a legislator, such as getting a phone call returned by a member of Congress or his senior staff. However, the average constituent can get the same access with about the same amount of effort, such as by showing up at a town hall meeting or getting 3 or 4 fellow constituents with similar interests to set up an in-person meeting in the legislator's Washington or state office. Access also is way overplayed. What drives a lawmaker? What's the number one thing that lawmaker probably wants in his career? To be re-elected. He is not going to turn his back on the people who support him, put him in power and keep him in power. He's not going to vote for you and give him enough money to go from conservative to extremely liberal. It's not going to happen. So the influence of money, I think, is way overstated. So from the American League of Lobbyists, most of the money that has influence is not political contributions. I believe that. But it's the money that's spent through lobbying, through grassroots, the home folk lobbying, through newspaper advertising. That's what has influence. So this idea of that campaign contributions are going to buy you very much, I think is very misstated. So here's our campaign contribution checklist. First of all, are you principled or are you promiscuous in your giving? Principled means this: you give to your friends and you withhold from your enemies. Promiscuous means you give to everybody so nobody gets mad at you. How are you going to make your campaign contributions? Perhaps my biases are found in my choice of words. How much does it take to get noticed? You get $50, who cares? But if every state has amount of money it takes to get noticed. In Florida, you get noticed for $1,500. The lawmaker knows who you are because that's a maximum, they have maximums you're allowed to give. Illinois, maybe $10,000. But how much does it get to take notice? So you say, okay, we're going to do the campaign donation business. We know in our state it costs $3,000 to get noticed, so we're going to have a campaign. We're going to have the source of money. We're going to divide it by 3,000, and that's going to tell us how many donations we can make to get noticed. What are you going to give? When are you going to give? Emily's List is a good example of making contributions early. The acronym EMILY means early money is like yeast. Early money is like yeast. And what it means is money given early in the campaign will get you so much more than money given later in the campaign. You need to know the laws affecting who is allowed to give. When are you allowed to give? Where are you allowed to make the donations at? What is it you are allowed to give? You need to know the laws affecting how much you're allowed to give, reporting requirements, when the reporting dates are. And don't make your campaign contributions in a public building, even if it is, if it is legal. You want to make sure you've got enough money to make these donations. In my opinion, you don't give to statewide races unless you think you're going to have a problem with the governor and the executive agencies. Then you can give to the governor or the head of the agency. Sometimes you're going to form a PAC. You know who's giving because it's all public records, and you know how much they've given. You can give your sympathy generously. But with your dollars, just give enough to get noticed when you make a campaign donation. Try it. Sometimes you can start with small donations and they'll come back and they'll ask you for more. They know how much money you have. They know is that, for example, if you're some big organization, they know how much money you have. If you are an individual, they know how much money you have. They're not expecting you to give the same as someone very powerful. They understand. You look for non-monetary contributions. So I had a principal. And my principal was very conservative, and our lawmaker for the district was very liberal. My principal had no interest in this particular lawmaker. They really didn't get along. Well, I liked our lawmaker. I made personal campaign contributions. She knew how much money I had. So enough to get noticed by me was not as much as it would take a large organization, so I could make campaign contributions. In fact, she used to call me my Republican friend. And so I need her support on a particular bill, and I want to make a donation. What am I going to do? My management won't help me out on this. What am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. Our factory was a unionized factory, Communications Workers of America, as I recollect. And she was a very liberal Democrat, and the union supported her. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to invite her to stand at the turnstile during shift change. And it's all union guys, people going in, and all union people coming out, and she gets to stand there at the turnstile, just waving to all. Those are the people who put her in power and keep her in power. And that non-monetary contribution was worth more, I bet, than a $10,000 contribution would be, because she was exposed to those people who are her buddies, not my management, but the people who were her buddies. So look for non-monetary contributions. Look for an endorsement. That can carry. What does a lawmaker do with an endorsement? What does they do with it? They put it on the campaign literature. If you are, I'll just use an example of police, for example. Those are huge endorsements from the cops or the fire people like that. So look for non-monetary contributions as well. Deliver the contributions yourself. And I will say this almost exclusively. You never have your contract lobbyist deliver your campaign contribution. It's you who should be doing it. You shake the lawmaker's hand and say, we support you. Never bring a check. Now, staff will tell you this, bring checks. I say, don't bring checks. It looks unseemly. You simply go to the lawmaker, shake his hand, and say, Representative, we really appreciate everything you've done for us, and we will be sending you support. And let it go with that. No sense of quid pro quo. You want to coordinate the giving with your lobbying team, with the coalition members to know that you're making these donations, with your association staff and your contract lobbyists. So when you make the donation, the lawmaker knows it came from you. You get all of the shine. But your contract lobbyist gets some of the shine indirectly because you're one of his or her clients, and they know who the clients are. You're going to record it. You're going to report it as is necessary. Let me ask you this. Why do you go to fundraisers? What is the benefit of a fundraiser? For gossip. Here is from a lawmaker. From a member's perspective, we call fundraisers cattle calls. I was always worried that they could give $1,000 to my campaign on Monday night, and I could shake their hand and walk past them in the Capitol on Wednesday night and not remember them, because I don't remember them, and have them think what a jerk I am. They're just faces in the crowd. So the question is, do you even stand out among all of those other people who are there? And if you've been to some of these very large fundraisers, you're just one of hundreds there. They don't even remember you're ever there. But it's a chance to talk to other people, learn who their supporters are, and gain intelligence and gossip. That's why you go to a fundraiser. When you make a campaign contribution, it tells the lawmaker that you are on his or her team. But if it's given to everybody, it says you're on nobody's team. So this is where you get into principled versus promiscuous. You give to your friends and you withhold from your enemies. And lawmakers, what drives them is a need to be loved. And we'll talk more about that shortly, but they need to be loved. And when you make a campaign contribution to that lawmaker, he feels the love. He feels the support. Campaigns can be very stressful opportunities, and when you give them money. It's no match for constituency, but it can enhance the impact of constituency. That organization from the district, those 5 or 6 people that you have raised up who are not only voters, but supporters of that lawmaker, are more powerful than any check someone's going to write. It mitigates for lack of constituency, and sometimes I would make a campaign contribution or even have my management make a campaign contribution because we didn't have any constituent interest to influence them. So it's the best we could do. Why do people make campaign contributions? Why do organizations make these big campaign contributions? Because they have nothing better to give than money. They don't have any constituents in the district. They don't have any influence in the district. So what have I got left? All I've got left is money. So I'll just give money around because I don't have anything else. So it can mitigate for lack of constituency. It can shift lawmakers to choosing paralysis. If the lawmaker has 2 donors and the lawmaker is starting to tilt in one donor's way, the other donor could say, I made a campaign contribution to you. I don't support that person. So the lawmakers say, I'm not going to alienate my donors. So we can get a lawmaker to choose paralysis rather than alienating donors. It could strengthen the bonds with the lawmakers, and it shows you understand the process. Whether yours is an endorsement, whether yours is a letter to the editor, whether yours is a campaign check, it shows you understand the process. It shows that you are a real player in the Capitol. And who knows, it may even make lawmakers care something about you. Money given to all lawmakers. Slade Gorton said this, senator from Washington State. It just seems to me that those who are trying to buy influence on both sides were simply wasting their money. The idea that you can play both sides and have people like you or influence them, I think is extremely foolish one. So the idea that you can just give money to everybody and think you're buying favor, they all say, no, you're not buying anything. What you're showing, you don't love me, you're just a gigolo, you know, and you don't care about me and I don't care about you either. So the way you show them that you care about them is by building relationships with them. Part of building that relationship can include a donation in any of several forms. It's a matter of showing that you're on the team. That's what they're looking for. You show me you're on my team, and then I'm on your team as well. All right, with that, let's go ahead and talk about working with special interests and coalitions. We understand the importance of staff. We understand the importance of writing our bill correctly. We're writing our bill for purposes of rulemaking because the bill is not an end unto itself. We understand the importance of understanding the rules of the chamber, both the written and the unwritten, and the unwritten and the unspoken. We understand is that if we're going to be effective lobbyists, we have to keep the same kind of hours that contract lobbyists keep as well. We categorize ourselves. You ask yourself, am I an administrator of lobbying contracts? Am I an image representative? Or am I someone who's actually trying to get laws passed? Any one of those are legitimate positions to be in, but just recognize where you are. As you go through this, you realize there's a whole lot of work to this. There is. And the question is, do you want to win? And if you want to win, you're going to be writing the bill and the bill summaries. You're going to be talking to the lawmakers. You're going to be going to the fundraisers. You're going to be consumed in this for that period. And as I said earlier, off session, you're doing your visiting as well. You lobby all year round. Legislatures don't run the Capitol. Jack Davies says this, legislatures respond, they seldom lead. In our chart, how an idea really becomes a law, who do we say is writing the legislation? The lobbyists. Even the Secretary of the Senate is showing that some citizen is giving them the bill. They're not writing the bills. So legislators respond, they seldom lead. So if lawmakers are not leading in the Capitol, then who does? It's all being done by the special interest groups. Who runs the place? Special interests, followed by legislative staff, followed by executive agency staff. And then if those three are on board, then the lawmaker can factor in his own political calculus and vote one way or the other. That's who's really running this place. That's why lawmakers are quaternary in importance. So it's going to be the special interests. They are the ones leading. So what are the special interests? They drive the capital. And lawmakers are almost exclusively motivated by the special interests who put them in power and keep them in power. Constituency, one may say, well, isn't that the number one thing? I say constituency is a power source. The sources of that power, the organizers of that power, are going to be the special interests. And so you will have the special interest organize the home folk. And there's all kinds of ways that they do this. But nevertheless, they will have, as we said earlier, what is one of your job? Your job is going to the district. Your job is raising up 3 or 5 constituents to go from registered voter, same party, all the way up. You're creating important constituents. You're getting them to go build relationships with the lawmakers if they haven't already built relationships with the lawmakers. That's where your source of power is. So constituency and the home folk is a power to be applied. And the actual lawmakers are going to be motivated by the special interests who are able to apply that power to keep them in power, to keep them in office. And all of these special interests are acting in whose interest? Whose interest are they acting in? Their own interest. Everybody is in it for themselves. Publius thought it merely visionary, that human nature could be changed to make citizens committed to the common good and the elimination of factions. It's not going to happen. It's not human. And because it's not human, we understand that the special interests are there and they're going to do things. They're going to provide ideas for the legislation. It's not coming from lawmakers for the most part. They're providing the labor. Your lawmaker, your sponsor, may put his or her name on the bill, and that's the last thing they ever do for your bill. Who's going to line up the votes? You're lining up the votes. Who is getting the constituents motivated? You're getting them motivated. They provide the labor. They provide the technical expertise. As smart as agencies are, and agencies are filled with really smart people, they don't know how your system operates as well as you do. They're the ones who actually make things happen. And so, yes, they're super smart over the departments, but at the same time, you know more about your little niche of knowledge than they do. They provide the political strength by creating coalitions, by motivating the home folk. They form coalitions, and when they form coalitions, they provide improved legislative efficiency. And I'll give you an example. I had a 2-year gig in Canada where I had to harmonize regulations between the Canadians and the Americans to allow the importation of hazardous waste from Canada into the United States. And I was lobbying the Ministry of Environment for Ontario province. And at one point, the ministry official said to me, and this applies to the U.S. just as well, but this is the illustration I have. He said to me, well, Robert, who do you represent? And I told him the name of my organization. He said, Robert, we know you represent them. We want to know your coalition because we want to know if we take care of you, we've taken care of every single member of your coalition. So it provides legislative efficiency when these coalitions all come together, these groups all come together, and it allows the lawmaker, the staff, to be able to resolve through one person rather than having to meet with everybody. Improved legislative efficiency. So who are the special interests? They're anybody who cares. They're going to be the regulatory agencies. They're going to be larger corporations. They're going to be churches. They're going to be unions. They're going to be local governments, charities, associations, and other coalitions. It's kind of like driving on the interstate in a big city. Everybody is on that interstate to go where they want to go. And the only time they notice you is when you get in their way or cause them a problem. Everybody is in the capital in their own self-interest. Self-interest is the engine of government. Self-interest is the engine of government. So special interests, they come together and they form coalitions in order to improve the chances of getting what they mutually want. And so a coalition is going to consist of all of these special interests that have a chance, that's your ideal coalition, to consist of everybody who has any reasonable interest in the direction of your bill. So when a coalition comes together, they try to create consensus among themselves. Remember, consensus propels, controversy kills. They want as much consensus as possible. They show constituency supporting a particular issue. They show the legislature that they are the experts in this coalition with regard to the subject matter of this particular bill. and they come together to take an idea and to move it into law. So who are candidate coalition partners? Don't pre-qualify anybody. Don't disqualify anybody. Coalitions exist for advantage, not love, not loyalty, not debt. They exist for advantage. They are ephemeral unions, and politics makes strange bedfellows. You may be a bitter opponent with one group, but comes a particular bill, and now you're on the same page. You have to have good relationships, even with your opponents. Remember what Benjamin Franklin said, there is no little enemy. You want to have as good a relationship as is possible. It may be that we never have any interests coming together. But at the same time, that bill can take place, and you will see strange coalitions together. All right, so we're going to think broadly about forming coalitions. First of all, who might have an interest in your bill? Who might be concerned economically? Who might be socially concerned about the elderly in nursing homes? Who might be philosophically interested? They're for or against, for example, for big government. Who might be ideologically interested in it? They support your general direction. Who might be politically interested in your bill? Who might be strategically interested in your bill? And I'll give you an example of a strategic interest. Strategic interest would go like this. That is, this particular committee takes up about 25% of the bills sent over on first reading. My opponent, that bill has been taken up. However, your bill hasn't been taken up. I will work with you to get your bill on the committee agenda for the purpose of knocking my opponent's bill off the committee agenda. So there's all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with your politics, simply because at the moment you are able to help each other accomplish what you want. So you can think broadly. Who brings relationships to your coalition? Who brings expertise? Who brings numbers? What if you're able to get on board with a large organization? Your numbers now have tremendously expanded. Who brings the resources, time, money, personnel? Who brings a good reputation to your organization? Who brings constituency, the single most important power source to influence lawmakers? Who has a degree of commitment to really make this thing go forward? Who brings a sympathy factor, and then who are your phantom members? And I do private seminars. Most of my seminars are private. And I'll tell my clients this. I said, listen, what would happen if you got the Mental Health Association on board with you? Now it's not just a wealthy organization trying to enrich itself, but you've linked yourself to people who don't have any resources, but they bring a sense of sympathy to your organization. So when you're looking for potential coalition partners, you want to think very broadly. And then there are the phantom members of your coalition. These are organizations whose names do not appear on your coalition member list, but they are phantom members of your coalition. And I'll give you an example. So working this bill through Congress, I told you the only bill ever got through. Okay, it's amazing. We did it. And so we have to run the traps. You got to talk to everybody. So here I am making this presentation to the staff, and the staff person says to me, "What does this organization have to say?" Well, we had visited with that organization. We were industry. This is an environmental organization. We visited with them, and staff asked us, what did they have to say? First of all, what would it have been had we never visited with them? What would the result be? Disrespect for the ill-informed. But we visited with them. We ran the traps. And so we visit with the organization. They say, we can't support you in this bill, but we won't oppose you. Normally, they would be opponents. So we go to the staff. Staff says, what do they have to say? I say, they won't oppose us on it. Staff says to themselves, oh, well then ding, there's not going to be a consequence to my lawmaker with this organization for supporting you because you ran the traps. You said they're not going to support it. We don't have a political liability. Fine. They are a phantom member of your coalition. You have to talk to everybody. You can't neglect anybody. There is no small enemy. 70% of winning in the legislature takes place before you ever talk to the first lawmaker. That's what you're spending your time doing. So coalitions together. When you are in a coalition, why are people there? Not for love, not for loyalty, not for debt, but for advantage. What happens when the advantage goes away for a particular member? So you have to ask yourself, what amendments to the agreed bill will cause you to quit the coalition? And what provisions will cause the coalition partners to throw you under the bus? Because the minute the advantage is over, their participation in the coalition is over. One time I was interviewing for a job and they asked me, what did I like most about lobbying? I said, what I loved most was the adrenaline rush of getting it through committee on a 3-2 vote. Well, what did you dislike most about lobbying? I said, trying to keep coalitions together as the governor is cutting sidebar deals to strip them away. So these are very volatile organizations. So when you think of joining a coalition, you ask yourself, what is it going to take in the change of this legislation to get me to dump this coalition? And then what is it going to take for them to throw me under the bus? Because coalitions exist for advantage, not love, not loyalty, not dead. They will throw you under the bus. You need to think this through before you get involved in the coalition. Don't risk a no. In coalition building, the first yes you get from a potential partner means that more likely the next one's going to be yes, and the first no is more likely you're going to get a no. And so when you're initially building your coalition, it's better not to ask at all than it is to risk getting a no. So here's our coalition checklist. You're going to rank your very best friend to your very worst enemies. Look at all the special interests in the Capitol, very best friend down to your worst enemy. You're going to determine, what would I have to give to each one of these people on my ranking list to get them to support me more or to oppose me less? You start negotiating with your very best friend. You work your way down to your weakest friend. Then you go down and start talking to your weakest enemy. And then you work your way down to your, as we say in Florida, your blood in the sand enemy. They are going to fight you every single step of the way. There's no way you're ever going to get these people on board with you. Why do you talk to them? Say that? So you did, because if you don't, what are you classified as? Ill-informed, disrespect for the ill-informed. And when the lawmaker says, well, what did they say? And you say, I never spoke to them, your reputation is lost or injured at that point. Even if you know what they're going to say, at a minimum you say to the lawmaker, I called them up and wanted to discuss this with them, but they wouldn't do it. That's fine. Sometimes you want to compare the strength you have to a much stronger party and say sometimes it's better off being the weaker part of a giant than it is to take a giant on. So let's go ahead now and turn to page 66, Activity 2, Coalition and Alliance Building. What I'd like you to do is, for your first activity, list the groups who are interested in your issue. Rank from the most supportive down to the least supportive, then the weakest opponent down to your strongest, most severe opponent against you. What do you have to give to your weakest opponent to get them to oppose you less in your bill? What do you have to give to your weakest supporter to get them to support you more in your bill? And then why do we build coalitions thoughtfully? Once again, this is a template. It may take you several days to be able to go through this in your own practices, but here's a template to get you thinking in that direction. So let's go ahead and work on that.